If someone ever gave you a choice to either do an Ultra Beast or go back in the octagon, which one do you choose?
What's the purse in the octagon? How much money?
Oh!
What's up, Saitos? I hope you are crushing your day. Welcome back to the Sensei Says podcast, offering you weekly inspirational discussions with successful people through which I dig out some practical advice, helping you and me improve our life. Thank you for choosing my podcast today. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe, like, comment, and share to a friend. Welcome to those of you listening or watching for the very first time. I hope you will enjoy your experience with me today. And do not forget to review. Speaking of reviews, I've got a cool promo for everyone listening on Apple Podcast. That could be your chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card. Tune in till the very end of this episode to know the details. And on that note, you have noticed, for those of you watching on the YouTubes, if you are not, how dare you? Yeah, I've got a book in my hand. That's coming in a few minutes. But the main point here is my t-shirt, my UFC Fight Night t-shirt, because we are, as of Thursday, the day this episode drops, a few days away from the rubber match between Conor, the Notorious McGregor, and Dustin, the Diamond Poirier. UFC 264 coming your way. I'm wearing that shirt because I attended that event in Boston in 2003, main evented by Chael Sonnen and Shogun Rua. And there was a relatively unknown fighter on the undercard named Conor McGregor. And I swear to God, at that time, I could not understand like the reaction of the fans in Boston because of the Irish thing, obviously. All of them shouting, singing loud the entrance music of Conor McGregor, which was at that time shipping up in Boston from the Dropkick Murphys. And me and my friend back in the day looked at each other like who's that guy? And unbeknownst to us, that was going to be the next UFC and MMA legend, one of the greatest of all time. So how about that for a story? You never know, right? So that's why I'm wearing my proudly my UFC Fight Night t-shirt today, and also because it's relevant to our guest this week. Charlie Brenneman is a former UFC fighter, a teacher, public speaker, and author. The book Driven I'm holding in my hand is available right now. If you want to get a copy for yourself, I thoroughly recommend it. senseisays.link/driven. We speak about Charlie's deep passion for reading and books, and also a thorough discussion on the philosophy of lifelong learning. And I hope you will enjoy.
So what is worst, the Spartan Beast you just did, or 3 rounds of UFC fights full on?
You know what? It's a very different suck, to be honest. I was actually thinking that when I was out there, because honestly, I do some 45-minute workouts that I think might be harder or more pain than doing a thing like this, but it's just a different type of pain. The good thing about everything other than fighting is that no one's going to punch you or kick you or hurt you. And it's like, that's just physically it's a nice thing, but psychologically it's just a giant elephant in the room that when no one's trying to fight you, it's just like, you can breathe a little bit.
There you go. And anything that you learned in the octagon that you can use up there?
Well, one, I mean, probably one of the most prominent is the physical assets, you know, like climbing things, having the muscular endurance, strength, cardio endurance, because it's a lot. Pretty much the way I train now is how I trained when I fought, and I'm also able to do a 13-mile, 35-obstacle race. So I think the training correlates also, but in terms of the the mental capacity to endure the pain and keep going, and honest to goodness that like I have different gauges of what I wanted to do. Like I'm not going to win. I'm not an elite competitor in obstacle racing. But to me, it was kind of like some little tests, but mental toughness was one of them. And I mean, it's 40 degrees and we had to get in water. And so for me, that was a huge test for me, and that mental toughness, derives a lot from wrestling and fighting.
And do you need still these challenges, these moments in which you find yourself challenged to grow and go further? Because when you're fighting against something, sometimes it's against yourself, it's against something else, but you feel the urge to go after something. So is it the same now that you've retired from the UFC, from MMA? Do you feel that urge to go after things always?
Yeah.
Like,
a 1,000,000% yes. And I think for me, and some guys know, I mean, some guys, they finish high school wrestling, win a state title, and they're good. They're good to go. They don't need anything else. For me, the yearning for that, like battle or fight or whatever, it started when I was a kid, and I just started doubting myself. So it was like, wrestling and then fighting, and something like this now, it's just a response to my internal dialogue that I have to continually kind of battle and fight. So doing something like this today, getting in that water in 40-degree weather, doing all this other stuff, that's like a giant check. I can walk with peace now. But yeah, I'm gonna have to do something else in the.
Yeah,
it's kind of like a blessing.
I was going there.
Yeah,
it's a check for now.
Yeah, but I mean that's the name of the game in anything. If you want to be great at anything, I mean this correlates to speaking and podcasting and writing books, which is what I do for a living now. So, there's a lot of speakers, there's a lot of authors, there's a lot of podcasters. So, a check like this is going to push me in that area as well.
And it's also part of your paradigm. I mean, to always be learning and growing. You're like 100% in that as an author and as a speaker. So maybe tell me where you go from here now. You've done a beast, but you got it still going.
Yeah, the whole focus of my message, one of the things I say most is just keep going, right? So overcoming adversity, keeping moving forward, moving the needle forward is huge in my life, my personal story, but also the message I put out there. And lifelong learning, so I dubbed myself the world's toughest lifelong learner. And that's the ideal of what I aspire to be, right? Tough in the sense of, I can kick your butt, but also tough in the sense of I'm not going to stay down for anything. But then the lifelong learning part of it is always just soaking in stuff. And in an event like this, I probably asked you 100 questions before we start recording because I'm just curious, right? And you never know when it's like, you're going to remember a thing that you asked and someone told you. So the combined hard work and tough stuff that this represents here in Tahoe with the learning and curiosity and it's just like you're banking, man. You're a martial artist. You got to practice.
Yep.
So there's like actual physical reps where you're lifting or you're throwing kicks, punches, etc. But then also like it's mental reps for your brain as well.
Yeah, that reminds me of a quote from GSP. Who said that he's always chasing after perfection, knowing that he's never going to attain it. And that I think that is a mantra that's carried through all martial artists. We know that the top step that we have to attain is perfection, and knowingly, we know it's unattainable, but each and every day we just try to make one step forward to that unattainable objective.
Yeah, and it's kind of a whatever, I can't think of an appropriate word, but a mind beep, because it's, I don't know what you say in Canada, but I can't think of anything else. But it's also that way with life, with family, with, I have a wife and I have kids, and I want to be the freaking perfect husband. I want to be the perfect father. It's not attainable. And there's a book called The Happiness Hypothesis. It's a great book. And it talks about a lot of what makes us happy is the gist of the book. A lot of science, a lot of data, a lot of history, but also some stories. And there's a thing called the progress principle that, through history, through data, through whatever, that we as human beings achieve happiness through progress towards a goal. So if we take what you just said, perfection, but then we bank, okay, well, it's not that that's going to make me happy. It's the actual pursuing of that that's going to make me happy. Getting closer to that is what makes me happy. So that's, it supports exactly what he said. Vince Lombardi, who's another great coach, American football coach, he said the same thing about perfection and excellence. So it's a very true thing.
So where does that come? Within you, that urge to be learning always. Does it go way back? You were when you were a child, or was there a moment in your life where that kicked in? Or
I think that the primary thing in me genetically, for whatever reason, is doubt, like just doubt. I'm just me from small town. I'm just Charlie from Hollidaysburg. Whatever. So then it was like, I wrestled, and then that internal battle was like put on display or whatever in wrestling, and then ultimately in fighting. And then after fighting, it was like, okay, now what? And I've almost like learning is my sport. And I've never really thought about this, but it's almost like learning is my sport. I needed something else to do. There's no fighting, there's no wrestling. I needed something else to do. And I got in the habit, we were talking about Frankie Yeager earlier, I got in the habit of being around world classes on a daily basis. And when I stopped fighting, I just wasn't. I live in Pennsylvania, I trained in Jersey mostly. It wasn't that way anymore. And then I was like, well, I do like reading books. I've always been a curious person. I've always been academic. It was instilled in me from a young age. But my real love of learning, it was like, all right, well, I'm not around world classers. All right, wait a minute. I can read books written by world classers. Now I'm around world classers every day.
There you go.
And then my podcast is essentially me teaching what I learned from those world classers.
And I got a friend of mine who I talk with. He's a pretty deep guy. And every time we talk about my objectives or what I want to do or my checks, like you say, the first question that he asks me is why.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like,
exactly.
And then you have to think, and then you go a little deeper, and then you come up with a more thorough answer. Yeah. So I'm asking you, lifelong learning. Yeah. Why?
Yeah. So I'll give you my thought on it first, and then I'll give you the answer to the question. It's understanding why you're doing something is huge, and there's books about it, and it's the popular thing, right, in personal development. Why, what's your why, etc. But sometimes it's like, if you just do it, I don't know and I don't care, I just do it, But when I do think about it, when someone asks me that question, I think about it, for whatever reason, I go back to middle school, and I go back to being so afraid of like getting beaten up, and so afraid of like doing something to getting in a fight, right, either hurting somebody or getting hurt. I was always on the straight and narrow path, and that means like doing the right things because I want to win a state title and get straight A's. And there was such like kickback from knuckleheads, like in my town, in my school. So I go back to me then, and I think, man, I just want to comfort anyone who feels like that. And when I was wrestling, it's a weird thing, like, and I mean, you probably experienced it from martial arts, but like when you or me or whatever just dedicate yourself to something, it brings people up. Like, it's an ideal that people are like, they feel good watching you pursue a thing.
Absolutely.
So that was me in wrestling. And then in fighting, I would get so many like messages that are just basically spilling their emotions out to me, saying how I'm helping them in one way or another. And I'm like, I'm just fighting. I don't even, but then it was like, wait a minute, if I just pursue something, it lifts people up. And then it's like, wait a minute, if I pursue learning and I pursue books, I can lift them up, but I can also teach them like how to lift themselves up and teach them all of this wealth that's in these books that I'm reading.
So how soon, because you first went on that route because you needed to feel appealed towards a world-class level, like you said before. At which point did you figure it out, hey, this could help other people, just like myself?
I think pretty early. So I didn't, I started, I stopped fighting, and then I wrote a book, and then it was like, okay, well, I guess I'll speak now, because people who write books speak, but I didn't know anything about it. And then I see a lot of people creating online courses. I was like, well, I'll create an online course. Just following, so there's a book, Success Principles, Success Leaves Clues is one of the principles. So I'm just like watching those guys and doing what they do. Okay. And then after I do that 100 times, I'm like, oh, I didn't like that, or I don't want to do that, or I took some of those ideas and was like, combine them into one idea, right? So I went through a bunch of phases of this and that. My show actually went through a couple different show names, and then it landed on lifelong learning. And I think that the benefit of lifelong learning is inherent. I mean, I think once I landed on that, it was a no-brainer. Oh, this helps people. Because from the time you I don't know if you have kids, but I have little kids. They can't do anything unless you teach them how to do stuff. So I think the value of it to other people is inherent. However, and I will say this from a business perspective, I'm long-winded here, but in the 1970s, people going for a run was not normal in American society. Phil Knight, Bill Bowerman, Steve Prefontaine, Phil Knight's the creator of Nike. Mm-hmm. I think it was University of Oregon. this guy had an idea, right? Steve Prefontaine was one of the best American runners, super popular, and he loved to run. So then Phil Knight, who eventually created Nike, along with Bill Bowerman, who was the coach, they created an industry of running, right? So right now, nobody lifelong learns every day, right?
Yeah.
So I'm essentially trying to create an industry, which this interview will be really awesome. If 25 years from now, there is a lifelong learning industry in the United States.
Yeah, there you go.
Because that's what we're really trying to do, because people don't have time for it. They don't want to do it. They don't see the value in it. So I just figure, all right, if I just embody lifelong learning and I'm able to build some really cool stuff, people will be like, oh, wait, I should do that, you know?
So precisely lifelong learning for all the people watching or listening, maybe the 3 key values they can get out of that principle would be what?
Yeah. I think perspective is huge. So just perspective. So maybe it could be perspective on you want to build a business and you gain perspective on what it actually takes to build a business. You read Milton Hershey's book, you read Phil Knight's book, you read Joe DeSantis' book, and you learn, oh man, that's what it takes. Or maybe it's perspective on your own problems. You know, you're absorbed in your own like BS every day. And then you read about someone who overcame this, that, the other thing. It gives you perspective. Whoa, my thing is not as bad as I thought it was. Another thing is empathy.
Empathy.
And I think that might be the most important one. But it just helps you understand like where people are coming from. And I was a professional fighter, so I'm ready to fight. Like I walk around every day and I'm like waiting for someone to fight me. It's like a paranoia pretty much. So I want to attack. And then reading, like, it just develops empathy, and also doing podcasts, you know, because I interview so many military people, so many people who overcome all kinds of stuff, and it like makes you understand. Whereas before you might look at a person and say, they're such a jerk, I can't stand them, blah, blah, blah. But then you look at them and you're like, oh, okay, they grew up in this place. They lost their parents when they were whatever years old. They didn't grow up with this, that, the other. So it really develops empathy. I think that's huge. And a third one is how to. Like actually teaches you how to do stuff. Like I just read a book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, by a guy who's very wealthy and he knows about finances. So he's teaching me how to use credit cards properly, how to buy houses properly, how to negotiate properly. So it like teaches you like actually how to do stuff as well.
And if while we are ending our podcast, if someone ever gave you a choice to either do an ultra beast, or go back in the octagon, which one do you choose?
What's the purse in the octagon? How much money?
Oh, you got me. Me. So are we talking pay-per-view or maybe ESPN Plus? What would be your criteria?
The dollar bills, I can fight right here, but if the dollar bills are high, then that's fine. But I would fight again, but it would need to be for a lot of money, and I just don't think that's really realistic. But I have to say, I've come to this event the last 3 years, and the first 2 years I've thought an ultra is the craziest thing ever, that blah, blah, blah. And then I saw like the word ultra, and I thought, yeah, maybe I'll try that someday. So I'm getting a little bit closer. I'm not saying I will do it, but it's at least like, maybe, you know.
Hey, if you were in need of another check.
I know,
right? That's that one.
I would have to train for that. I didn't really train for this, but I would absolutely have to train for that.
You absolutely got everything that it takes, I think, to overcome.
I appreciate it.
You know, man, you got punched in the face for a living.
You know what? We'll just
That's running in the mud and then jumping around.
This is true. But if with that vote of confidence from you to me, I'm checking the box right now. I already did it, so I don't got to do it again. We're good to go.
Really inspiring and stimulating conversation with Charlie Brenneman, the Spaniard. I really hope you enjoyed the conversation. They're my favorite when we go deep and intellectual and exchange philosophies. Those are my favorite talks of all time. And we've got a ton of them coming your way during this month of July. An awesome month for you guys on the podcast. Next week, Kathy from Corfit. She's a Spartan Race Elite and OCR coach. My good friend Johnny Wade, the host of the Spartan Up podcast. Really well-read and thoughtful guy. And Patrick Sweeney, a successful entrepreneur. So yeah, you're welcome. For now, let's revisit what we've learned humbly. I will say that humbly with Charlie on this podcast. So the three main benefits of lifelong learning and reading books. First, perspective, because it may become very difficult to gain an outlook on things when you're right in the middle of your own war, your own issues, trying to push your project forward, dealing with the hassles, the ordeal, the difficulties. So you need sometimes a guide or a mentor to show you a broader view on the problem at hand, and what better source of guide and mentors than books. Number two, empathy. I really think that's a relevant one, and thank you, Charlie, for sharing that, because we are as humans so quick to judge people from all kinds of walks in life, but you never know what those walks of life entail, what they encompass, what are the consequences on a human being. So reading about them, meeting these people, talking to them, like I said, reading their stories will bestow on you empathy, a comprehension of what these situations might bring to a human being, and broaden your perspective or comprehension of the human experience. Third, how to, and I think the book series ... for dummies is a prime example of that. So if you're looking to do something, whether it be an intellectual endeavor or you want to build your own birdie cabana, you've got a book for that, right? So how to is a huge aspect of reading, and books, reference books, cover all kinds of subjects, and they are available everywhere, just as is Charlie's Driven and World's Toughest Lifelong Learner books, available now through my link, senseisays.link/driven, at least for the Driven book, and you'll gain a bunch of in-depth knowledge and inspiration from my good friend Charlie. I hope you have enjoyed this interview conversation this week on the Sensei Says podcast. Please let me know in the comments or share on my social media at Sensei Says Pod what you learned through books. So do you agree with Charlie? Do you have more things you want to add? Please share with me. I always like to read what you guys have to say. Don't forget to review, share, comment, and subscribe to this podcast. And I did speak earlier about a promo for Apple Podcasts. So here it is, guys. If you leave a positive review and 5-star rating on the platform by July 31st, you earn a chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card. I will pick the winner randomly on July 31st. So please try to make my life easy and give yourself a readable, I said readable, nickname. All right. So speaking of which, thank you to 12Bizou, Veroninu35, and HR Tran for your positive review. I really enjoyed reading your comments. If you want to get the episodes fast and first, don't forget to sign up to the newsletter and go nuts through our archive. Now that we've come to a 6th episode, we can proudly say that we've got an archive. Yes! And I hope you will enjoy those episodes. On that note, Saitos, I will see you next week. Oos, you are dismissed.
If you can move well, you'll set yourself up to do whatever it is, your goal, your dream. If you want to run an obstacle course race, whatever it is, move well first, and then let everything open from there.
There's always somebody who just shows up. And in life, you can't just show up, and ultimately it catches up with you. And the mountains are not forgiving. And so we've had guys fall in crevasses. We've guys had